8 years ago, minus 3 days, I was ordained to the Unitarian Universalist ministry. My family, some friends, some colleagues, some congregants, and some mentors gathered at the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia, and the ritual of ordination occurred. For an ordination to happen, a congregation has to determine for itself that an individual is fit to serve our movement and our people, fit in terms of preparation and in terms of temperament. Sometimes our congregations get it wrong and ordination doesn't stick, but often they get it right. The ritual itself is not dissimilar to our Sunday services. There's music and there are readings, prayer and commitments are made, and there's a sermon, that 17 to 20-minute thing I and other ministers do on Sundays. This morning's is shorter. That long conversation that draws on our experience, on the sources we commit ourselves to knowing, and on our powers of analysis and persuasion. The sermon so often is that culminating moment, that one that brings together all the elements that have come before, excavating from the poetry and prose and silence some meaning and message that will help us all to live more fully in our lives. My ordination sermon was preached by the Reverend Galen Gingrich. Galen had come sometime during my childhood to be a minister at All Souls Unitarian Church in New York City, where I grew up. So I had known him in some capacity since I was pretty young. And since I had entered into ministerial discernment, he had been a mentor of sorts. In that ordination sermon, he spoke about his understanding of this work of ministry. We ministers have 4 roles, he said: preacher, pastor, prophet, and priest. The work of the minister as priest is the work of ritual. We Unitarian Universalists don't go in overly much for ritual, but we do, as all people do, understand that marking the passage of time and the important moments of a life matters. The minister as priest welcomes new life into the world by dedicating babies, solemnizes marriages, and facilitates the promises that new couples make to each other and to the world, remembers and cries and celebrates with those who are left behind after a death. The minister priest devises rituals to mark moving into a new home, beginning a new job, ending a marriage, and so much more. The work of the priest is to formalize the meaning making that is the work at the heart of religious community and experience. The work of the minister as pastor is the work of empathy. Always mindful of where our expertise in care ends and where the work of trained psychological professionals begins, the minister as pastor listens, asks questions, offers a friendly and non-judgmental ear as you work out your beliefs about the world, as you share the pain of your losses, as you worry about the future, or realize who you are deep in your heart. The minister as pastor consults, gently pushes, holds, and bears witness. The minister as pastor holds your new babies, showers them with welcoming love, holds your hand as you pass out of this life, and holds your loved ones as they grieve. The work of the pastor is to provide safe space for you to share your life so that religious community can be built through vulnerability and care. The work of the minister as prophet is the work of justice, of speaking truth to power, of crying out in the night that there is a better way. The minister as prophet doesn't let you put your head in the sand, asks you to confront the injustice of the world, the apathy in yourself, the privilege or fear or inertia that keeps you from transforming this world. The minister as prophet tells you hard things, asks you for hard commitments, pushes the community to look beyond itself. The minister prophet speaks the names of those who have been slaughtered in the streets. The minister prophet marches, writes letters to the editor, cries with you, and questions everything. The work of the prophet is to create in the community a drive to change what is for the better and to hold the community accountable for the vision of such change. The work of the minister as preacher is to spread the good word of life, of Unitarian Universalism, of hope, of love. The work of the minister preacher is to bring new teachings, old wisdom, gathered from all the sources around the wide and diverse world, and to think through them with you, lifting up what is eternal, what is beautiful, what is true, what is real. The minister as preacher carries on a conversation with the community, Sunday to Sunday, that helps to deepen our collective understanding, our shared commitment, and our individual lives, assisting us in living our values more honestly and in becoming ourselves more fully. The work of the preacher is to lead the engagement in that never-ending discussion of what matters most, what means the most in these two short lives of ours. That's what Galen preached at my ordination sermon, or at least that's what I remember that he preached. It's what I took away from what he said. Priest, pastor, prophet, preacher. We were reminded earlier that 500 years ago, Martin Luther stood on his convictions and refused to recant. 4 years earlier, he had nailed his 95 Theses to the doors of churches in Wittenberg and had begun a chain of events that would alter the world forever. While our Unitarian and Universalist forebears were certainly not Lutheran, they were, and we are, inheritors of the revolution, the Reformation that Martin Luther reluctantly, really unwittingly, began half a millennium ago. And part of what that revolution did was to bring out a belief in the priesthood of all believers. That's the phrase we hear. Galen preached at my ordination about what a minister's work is, and I have come to understand in these past 8 years of parish ministry that this is also the work of the people. You come, you bear witness, you make yourselves present to each other, participating in the rituals of meaning making, being priests for each other. You hold each other's hands, you care for each other, you listen and you empathize, being pastors for each other. You rail and you weep and you march and you advocate and fundraise and donate and face the hard truths and try and change the world, being prophets alongside each other. You participate every Sunday, every day, in the ongoing conversation, the investigation and discussion about what matters in order to deepen all our lives, being preachers to each other. Though the attribution is likely faulty, many will quote that line about the priesthood of all believers as Luther's. Whether or not he said such a thing, the spirit of his unintentional movement was indeed one of all believers. And that's what we inherit, in part, from those long ago Protestants, a belief that each and every one of us is capable of making meaning, being present, bearing holy witness, speaking with authority from our own experience, accessing the divine and building community. My friend and colleague, the Reverend Cecilia Kingman, reminded me that the root word for liturgy actually means the people's work, though we use it often to mean the work of ritual and religious ceremony. And the word worship, she writes, has one root definition that means to consider worth or to consider what is worthy. So this thing we do on Sunday mornings and sometimes on a weeknight, whether we call it a service or worship, it is collective work. The music, the sermon, the meditation, all of it is not a performance to be consumed. It is work to be participated in. It is a consideration that we all do together. It is an act of countercultural resistance that asks us to look past what the world teaches us to focus on, appearance, wealth, productivity, and to slow down, be together, ask questions and speak answers we aren't sure of yet, just to see how they feel on our tongues. It's an act of countercultural resistance that asks us to stop being so strong and impenetrable and angry, and instead to feel, to weep, to let our hearts break, and to still show up again with our hearts open and ready to be broken. It's an act of countercultural resistance that asks us to build communities across difference, to open our minds, to offer forgiveness, and to offer love. And this thing we do, it's training, because our consideration of that which is of the most worth asks a lot of us, and we often come up short. Sometimes we come together and we just can't slow down our minds for the meditation. Sometimes we come and we cannot bear to open our hearts to the message of the sermon. Sometimes we come with our defenses up and our critical eye outweighing our open hearts. Sometimes we come primed to be disappointed because the service isn't what we would have said about a topic, or because something was said that doesn't suit our personal theology or viewpoint. The training, the practice, the growth and openness and commitment comes in when we show up again the next week. Even if we found something in the service off-putting, even if not every element spoke to us, even if we weren't able to open ourselves one day, we come back again and again, practicing what it means to be a priest, a pastor, a prophet, and a preacher. We come back again, practicing meditation and reflection and breathing, empathy and compassion and caring, conversation and questions and discussion. We come back again and again, practicing love. And this is why we worship. This is why we come here together Sunday after Sunday. For the music, yes. For the poetry, yes. For the stories, yes. For the sermons, yes. For the company and coffee hour, yes. But at the end of the day, we come for the deeper sense of community, for the chance to learn who we are and practice being our best selves, for the chance to see others and to be seen, to hold others and to be held, to love others and to be loved. We Unitarian Universalists don't generally come for God. We don't come for a chance at heaven. We don't come to avoid hell. We come to know the divine in others, to experience the transcendence of moving outside ourselves in generosity and care. We come to bolster each other in transforming the world and creating heaven right here, right now. We come because this life can be hell, and the pain of living is eased when we go somewhere that names the harshness and still offers us a reminder of all that is beautiful and wondrous and good. Our services use all the tools at our disposal, and each service can look different. More stories or more music, a longer sermon or a shorter homily, ritual activity and engagement with each other, more quiet or less quiet. But each and every service has the same aim at its heart: to build community, to help us know ourselves, and to deepen and grow, to do our shared work and to make meaning of this time we are given. Some services will be more successful for you than others will, certainly. But the work of our shared dialogue is ongoing. Each time we come together to pause and reflect and make sense of the world we live in, to find what is worthy in our lives and commit ourselves to pursuing it. Each time we come together to grow and work for justice and to change ourselves. Each time we do this, we're reminded that we're not alone. Why do we worship? We worship to be reminded and renewed in the knowledge that though our lives are our own, we belong to each other, and we are part of something larger, something that calls us to empathy, to growth, to justice, and to love.